Living teachers. I thought I'd speak a little bit about living teachers, because sometimes, I remember in the early days when I was first developing myself, I seemed to struggle all the time to find the right teachers. Everyone I went to see, to train with, I just could see they weren't living it. You know, I've got people saying they're teaching me Budo, but they're shagging their students and fiddling their tax and getting involved in road rage, and I'm thinking, well, that isn't Budo. I don't know a lot, but I know that's not Budo. Or I'm working with people, you know, that are saying that they can change the world, but they can't even change their own body shape. And I'm you know, I'm going to meet a Zen monk to learn about Budo, to learn about the Tao. And my wife saying to me, you're wasting your time going there, you won't find your teacher there. And I go and sit with this Zen monk, and he spends most of the time slagging off Christian theology, and I'm thinking, well, that doesn't sound enlightened to me. If he was enlightened, why would he care about whether Christian theology is right or wrong? And I struggled for a long time to find teachers, and then I realised, of course, I was surrounded by teachers. I brought some in with me today. I brought some of my favourites. Geoff. I always used to say I'd love to meet Geoff. Well, of course I'm meeting him. I'm meeting him through this book. I've got 3 or 4 of his books downstairs. Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson, one of the most enlightening books I've ever read. It scared the shit out of me because it was so honest and so revealing and so difficult. Geoff was sat with me for 2 weeks. He was sat with me like he's as clear as you are now, or as clear as I am in this image. Geoff was sat with me. He was a living teacher. He puts all of his words are stored in this tabernacle, in this energy here. People, I don't know what price this was, 20 or 30 quid. I've spent thousands on books, so that I always thought I couldn't find a teacher, but of course I looked in my front room and I realised I was surrounded by thousands of living teachers, amazing people wanting to give me their knowledge, their essence, you know, through a book. And I realised, of course, as they say, everybody that reads the Bible writes the Bible. Everyone that reads the Quran writes the Quran. Everyone that reads the Tao Te Ching writes the Tao Te Ching. Everyone that reads the Guru Granth Sahib writes the Guru Granth Sahib. Everyone that reads the Bhagavad Gita writes the Bhagavad Gita. I'm aware that I'm not reading to learn, I'm reading to remember. It's all in me. You know, I'm connected to all of it, and these are just reminders of it. But how many people do you know that will go and actually pick up a copy of the Holy Bible and read it? I got the Holy Bible on audio, and I had living teachers with me, some of the greatest living teachers in the history of man. And these books, believe me, are fucking pure poetry. If you read Revelations, or if you read Psalms, or if you read St. Paul in his letters to the Romans or the Corinthians, it's pure poetry and pure wisdom. Forget about the dogma. Forget about what people have told you about religion. Religion just means to align to the Akashic, to align to grace. These living teachers are all in this book. I sat and listened. I went through the Old Testament and the New Testament on audio in my car. 80 hours of instruction. Can you believe that? 80 hours of instruction. It was so exciting, and it was so challenging. It was very challenging to sit and listen to 80 hours because the material is so rich. You fucking want to fall asleep afterwards because it's so tiring. But that information has permeated every cell of my body. Living instructors. You've got Moses in there. You've got Abraham in there. You've got St. Paul in there. You've got Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. You've got Solomon. You've got St. John of the Cross, who had the revelation. So you've got Revelations in here. And even if you're just a writer or you're an artist, Revelations is one of the most powerful poetic pieces of work I've ever read. Have a look at the Holy Quran. I haven't got my copy in front of me, but the Holy Quran, I can't remember how long it took me to read it, but it was beautiful. I mean, especially the final verses, which are pure poetry. They come from a very divine place. These are living teachers. You want to speak to Muhammad, he's there. he's actually in the books. It's actually been put in the books. Musashi, one of the greatest warriors that ever lived, tells you his essence. This is his biography. He did a book called The Book of Five Rings. He tells you everything he's learned from his lifetime, not just a lifetime, but a lifetime on the very bleeding edge. Look at Dorian Yates. You want to know what it took to become a 6-time Mr. Olympia, where he had to go, what he had to do. Didn't even have to fucking leave Birmingham. You know, just go straight into it. That's there. I don't even know what it'll cost you. 20 quid. It's worth, you know. I was talking to a kid on my sovereignty course, my pure function course last session, a guy called Kev, and he said to me the first hour of the session today was worth the £1,200 for the whole course because of what he learned in that one day. But for lots of the session, he said felt like going home, felt like he wasn't learning, he wasn't going to get anything. He wanted to step away from it. The information is there, and if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, you look at that, and first time somebody gave me this book, my friend Manoj, and I remember thinking, yeah, I won't read that. I'm not interested in. I'll show you some of the pictures. It's beautifully illustrated. There's some in this. I remember looking at it and thinking, yeah, I won't be reading that. I'm not really interested in. These are some of the pictures. It's really beautifully illustrated, but I remember just looking at the cover and seeing blue people. Krishna is always portrayed in blue as a blue skinned person. I remember thinking, I have no idea what this is. I have no idea why this person's given me this. I'm not going to read that. This is many years ago. And then about 5 years later, I picked the book up and looked at it. I was going through a bad patch, and it was fucking hell, it spoke to me. It spoke to me. And then I realised this was the book that Gandhi carried with him everywhere. Gandhi had a copy of the Gita, took it with him everywhere. Gandhi went from being a 7-stone weakling, a very small, inconsequential Indian guy who went on to have 300 million followers and brought the British Empire to its knees non-violently. A man with huge presence, a man that worked purely on experience, and he went straight to it. Same as Dorian, you know, the same as Musashi. It went straight to it, and he got sovereignty through palate, through the control of his food. The food controlled his senses. When he controlled the food, he controlled the senses. When he controlled the senses, he was able to control himself. When he's able to control himself, he's able to control the world. So this is a man that went to massive levels of sovereignty, again, just through picking up books, reading books, learning from the books, finding his living masters. As far as I can remember, he didn't have any specific, living master. He corresponded with people, and he took his information from this. This is the book he carried with him everywhere. It's the greatest, probably the greatest book ever written on your battle with perception, your battle with belief, your battle with cognition. It's written in the form of a real battle, the Battle of Guru, etc., where Prince Arjuna is going into battle to win his kingdom back, and he's got Lord Krishna on the chariot with him. But it's really a battle about your high self instructing your lower self to dissolve all of your old beliefs, dissolve all your old cognitions, dissolve all your old perceptions, and create bigger beliefs, bigger perceptions, new cognitions, and be a better, greater, stronger receptacle for the light to work through. Light or truth is always going to be limited by the receptacle that it's transmitted through. So we have to make ourselves more accessible, more available, and broader. And these living teachers are going to give it to you. Madame Blavatsky, one of the greatest mystics in the history of our species, very controversial woman, but again, massive insight. This is another person that wanted to test things for herself, not just take other people's word for it. She took instruction, of course, but she went out and put it to test. The truth wasn't the truth until she tested it, but she's there. She's a living teacher. This is 2 volumes called Isis Unveiled by Blavatsky, and in it she's telling you everything she's learned, and I don't even know what it cost, 30 quid or something. Most of the stuff you can get free online, but I wouldn't recommend you buy it. I wouldn't recommend you get it free online. You're worth more than that. Don't cheapskate yourself. One of the things Ouspensky said, Ouspensky was Geoff's main student, he said, everybody has to pay and everyone has to pay up front. So we cheapskate ourselves when we don't pay for our material. We have to make room for it. We have to use our money and our time and say, yes, I want this. I definitely want this. I'm going to exchange my energy for this. So there is stuff there. If you can't make the money shape, if that's not possible at the moment, there is free material there. But as soon as you can, pay for it. Make sure you make room for it. It's very important. But these teachers are out there. Look at this one, Hafiz. Your fear is the cheapest room in the house. I want you to live in better conditions. That's a poem by Hafiz, one of the most connected poets of our species, not of a generation, but of our species. There was Hafiz, there was Rumi. They were incredibly aligned poets. These books are out there. Most of these books, that one's $20 or something. Most of these books, the spiritual ones and the metaphysical ones particularly, you can get from a bookshop called Watkins in London. It's one of the greatest esoteric bookshops in the world, and all of the top esoteric teachers, people like Eckhart Tolle and that, I've always visited these places. All of the top spiritual teachers at one time or another, people like Muji, have got into this shop and bought their material there. It speaks to you. It's all in there. There's a little book now by Eckhart Tolle. It's a tiny little book. Look, it doesn't look like there's much in there. You might look at it and think, what am I going to learn from that? This is one of the oldest techniques in the world for developing self-sovereignty, developing self-control. All the information's in here. You can get it for $9.99. The information has come from a lifetime of research, empirical research from Eckhart Tolle. He's one of the new prophets, and this technique is very profound. It's how to dissolve shadows, how to dissolve old beliefs, how to fight demons or divided thoughts. These books are out there. Patanjali's Yoga. This book tells you about everything from meditation right the way through to manifesting, right the way through to siddhas, how to make yourself bigger, how to make yourself smaller, how to make yourself invisible. If you're into that kind of stuff, all the metaphysics. But it's a very powerful, very honest book. He was one of the teachers of the Vedas, of the Puranas. It comes from the Hindu sect, but Patanjali was one of the favourite people I've ever read. Of course, we know this stuff doesn't mean nothing if you don't practice it, but this is where we first learn. These are living instructors. If I want to speak to Patanjali, I just have to go to his book and he tells me what he's learned in here. And this is what Patanjali learned from a lifetime. You can get Ramana Maharishi, you can get Milarepa. In the martial arts, you can go and get Neil Adams, you can go and get the Gracies, you can go and get the Machados. In script writing, you can access the greatest playwrights and film writers in the world. In acting, these guys are accessible all the time. We just have to be brave enough to invest our money and have a house full of living instructors. I've got rid of 3 libraries so far because my library keeps overflowing and I keep having to make room for more. So continually, I used to think, am I buying books? Why am I buying books? Then I realised I wasn't buying books. I was inviting living instructors, living teachers, living gurus, living shamans, living mystics, living magi into my house. Very exciting.